All right, good morning. This is WASA Distance Education, MEL3E, grade 11 math, workplace and everyday life. I'm Pete, I'm your teacher, and we're just wrapping up the review of the course today. So this is the last day of class, and if you have some assignments done, you should send them in as soon as possible. Okay. Really, you should have until the end of next week. If you have any assignments and you think it's going to take you longer than that, please let me know beforehand so we can just do a little bit of paperwork. Okay. It's not a big deal, but we just have to fill out some paperwork to give you an extra couple weeks in the course. Okay. Once you have everything done and in, I'll finish marking it, and once you get that feedback, then you'll be able to write the final exam. Okay, you'll arrange the final exam with the Learning Center. Okay. So here we are. We're going to continue the review in Unit 3 where we left off yesterday, and we kind of haven't really done much reviewing on Unit 4 just because we spent so much time on it with the course material and then the culminating activity. Okay, so that's where we're at, Unit 3, and I think we kind of left off. We were looking at okay, here we go, loans. Okay, so we talked about credit cards yesterday and just the different ways to calculate interest on credit cards, the different information that the banks will ask uh, of you. Okay. So yeah, so we can maybe just back up just a little wee bit here. Okay. So the sorts of questions that you will see on credit cards, there's two sort of bits to it. There's one is about the applications, and then the features and benefits of credit cards, right? So you're going to get a certain amount of you're going to get a certain amount of information that you have to provide for the credit card, and then you should be able to explain why you have to provide that. For example, why do you have to give them your address, right? Well, mainly so that they can know where to send the bill. All right, so they can find you if they have some question. This one um, on the top of page 5, why is housing information important to the company when you're applying for a credit card? And again, that's because housing is usually the biggest cost that a person has. So they want to see what your housing situation is and sort of get an idea of how that's impacting your budget. Okay, if you're staying with someone, that's a huge deal. You're going to have lots more money because you don't have those expenses, but it could be quite challenging for the um, for the credit card company, because if that changes, right, then your situation will be different. Okay. And then this other question here we talked about as well, what other than credit cards, what are other ways of purchasing items and paying for them later? Okay, so there are a few different other ways, to do that. A check, they're being accepted less and less nowadays by stores. But remember, paying for them later, right? So not, if you use a debit card, you're basically paying for it straight away. Okay. Loans, you can get a loan. Some places offer layaway plans. It sort of comes and goes. I think recently quite a few stores have started their programs back for layaways. You pay for the items and they put them away, and then you kind of have a little payment plan. You come in regularly, and once you've made your last payment, you get the items. Okay. And that would be it. Some other ways I'm thinking, it's not really purchasing an item, but if you bought it like a prepaid card, a gift card or a prepaid credit card, it's, I guess, in a way that you're purchasing the value of the item anyway. So it's but the number of ways of purchasing items and paying for them later is kind of reduced. Credit card seems to be the main one. Okay. So, and credit cards are something that you get, if there's an emergency. It's nice to have, but if you're in an emergency, chances are you're not going to be able to get one. All right. Um, so we talked about how the new balance is calculated, and we talked about how interest is calculated on the credit card. So remember, it's daily interest. So you're gonna, in most of our loan type questions were, um, of the type. Let's see. Uh, Most of our loan questions have been talking about monthly interest or semi-annually or something like that. But for credit cards, it's daily interest. So you have to remember when you're dealing with a credit card, generally you're going to be dividing interest rate by 365 because that's daily interest. Okay, so you turn the interest rate into a decimal, divide that by 365, and that's your daily rate. Now, I advise you to just convert the interest rate to a decimal and then just show it as a fraction over 365 in your calculations. The book kind of the book calculates it out, but you're going to have a lot of zeros there, and there's always a risk that one of them will go missing, or having to retype that into your calculator could be just a little challenging. Okay, so anyway, either way, but I was suggesting you do it kind of the way I've done on the right hand side here. All right. Now, the other thing is, of course, credit cards, it's the same as any compound interest calculation. We're finding, when we do those calculations, we're finding the total amount. Okay, so the amount, say, after 30 days or 31 days, right? And so you'll get that amount in there. And so in order to find the interest, then you have to use the other formula that we have. So I equals A minus P, right? And you'll have that on the exam. You're given a couple of formulas um, right at the beginning of the exam, so you'll be able to use them. You're given a simple interest formula, the A equals P plus I, compound interest formula, the I equals A minus P. The one about fuel, how to calculate fuel consumed, and how to calculate uh, the cost. It just those are just sort of general formulas that they give you. So that's not so bad. Okay, so you have those. All right, and so then we looked at some questions on how to solve credit card type problems. Okay, so the next thing then is going to be loans in general, which is it's very similar to credit cards. The difference is that the on a loan, the interest rates are a little lower usually. The terms where the time you have to pay is a fixed length of time rather than a credit card where you just pay it off whenever you want, as long as you're willing to pay interest. Usually a loan is for a fixed period of time, a year, 2 years, 4 years, something like that. And then the other thing uh, about loans is they may not have a daily compounding. Maybe it'll be monthly or something like that. So in general, loans are less expensive. Now, the thing though is that depending on what type of loan it is, you may have to provide some sort of security, right? And that's actually one of the reasons why the loan is less expensive. So you might have to, like if you're borrowing money to buy a car, a loan for a car, the security is the car. If you don't pay the loan, and they take the car back, right? So that's the security, right? And that in a way makes loans a little safer for the bank because they have something they can get back if the person stops paying. Okay. Now the cost of a loan is a bunch of variables in the loan cost. And for example, the amount of money you want to borrow, obviously, the length of the loan. Okay, the longer you borrow money, the more it costs, right? And then the other thing there is that interest rates change, right? So if they give you a certain interest rate for a longer period of time, the bank is taking more of a risk that the rates will go up and they'll miss out on some money, right? Because they're not going to increase your interest rate unless you get one of those variable rate loans. Okay, if you get a variable rate loan, then that can be usually can be a little cheaper at first, but unfortunately, the interest rate can go up, and it can go up quite substantially during the life of the loan. Okay, and then of course the amount of regular payments. The more you pay on the loan, the quicker you'll pay it off. and the less interest you're going to pay. The rate of interest, it made the news today that the Bank of Canada lowered the interest rate yesterday, yes, and it was a little surprising. And it's funny reading the statements from the banks this morning that they're not going to change their interest rates right away. You can bet that if the rate had gone up, if the Bank of Canada rate had gone up, they'd be increasing the rates right away. But they aren't, and so in effect, the banks are taking advantage of a gap between what the Bank of Canada charges and then what they're charging their customers. And they'll let that coast for a little while until one of the banks finally uh, gives in and lowers their interest rates. Okay, but the thing is, if you lock in a 5-year fixed rate loan, and then the next day the interest rate goes down, you won't take advantage, you won't benefit from that, right? So that's where having a little bit of awareness of the financial markets and the economy in Canada can help you, especially if you're going to make a big purchase item. Just kind of have a read the financial news pages on the web as you're thinking about buying your house or your car, to kind of get a sense of whether you might be better off waiting a little bit in case interest rates go down. Okay? And then, of course, the number of regular payments paid in a year, and this applies to big ticket items, a car loan and a mortgage. You may have heard the double up mortgages where you can double up your payments, and some car loans you can do that as well. And that basically allows you, you set your payment based on what you can comfortably afford. And then you can actually add extra money to those payments to increase the rate of payout, paying off your mortgage. And that's a really good deal, because let's say there's two people in a house, and one has a steady work, a good salary, and everything's fine, and then the other person kind of works casually. Okay, so if you get the loan based on the one person's income, right, then that's great, and then it doesn't matter if the other person doesn't have steady work or not. But if they do get steady work, or if things get better with their work situation, now you have more money to put towards that loan. You see, so you didn't depend on it, but you take advantage of it. Okay, and you can really reduce the length of time it takes to pay off the loan that way, because all of those extra payments go to pay off the principal of the loan. So that means that every compounding period there's less principal, which means less interest is being charged. Okay, and it can make a huge difference pretty quickly. Okay, especially a house. The other thing they'll let you do, and it doesn't say it in there, but on a mortgage, they will, for a home loan, once a year they'll let you pay off. Usually it's 10% in a lump sum. Now that seems like it might be a lot, but it's up to 10%. Right? So, for example, some people get a big tax return every year. You get $2,000-3,000 in your taxes back, right? So, one thing that people do with that is use that as that 10% yearly payment on their home, and it makes a huge difference. Okay. So, so here's an example, just kind of how it goes. How much is the cost of a loan? So let me talk about the cost of a loan. Okay. That is the amount. This is really what they're asking, the amount. And I guess when we're working with loans, they just call it amount. Okay. So, yeah. So to work out the cost of a loan, basically it's a straightforward calculation. It's the monthly payments, so the number of payments per year times the number of years. So it's basically you're calculating your N value if it was compound interest, right? So that you have the number of monthly payments, so that's basically your N. Okay, that's basically N. Okay, and then you just multiply that by the payment amount, and you get the total cost of the loan. So this is your A value right here. And you could actually work out now the interest, because you know that the loan, the principal right here, so you could easily work out the interest in that case. Okay, and then of course they're going to do that here in the next example. So you got a 5-year loan. Okay, $20,000 monthly payments. So monthly is $12 per year. That's the payment for each month. So the first thing we do is we work out the number of monthly payments, right, which is the same as working out N here. Okay, your N value. You get the total cost of the loan, and then you use the I equals A minus P version of the formula, which you do have in the exam right on in the second page. Okay, and so there we go. Yeah. So you can try a few of those support questions if you want to practice that. Okay, but as long as you can do a couple of them, then you're perfectly fine. Okay. Now, one of the things that you're going to get with a loan and that you need to be able to interpret is it's an amortization table. Okay, and that's just a big chart that shows you all the details of your loan over time. Okay, and it's a really important piece of paper to get. Now, whether they give it to you in paper, it could be a very long document. If you have a 20-year home loan and you're paying bi-weekly every other week, then it could be a really, really long document. Sometimes they'll send it to you electronically, but it'll be somewhere in the paperwork. Now, just stepping back a little bit, that's one of the things to talk about, because we talk about paying down loans and mortgages. Sometimes they'll give you the option to pay your loan monthly or to pay your loan bi-weekly, and sometimes even weekly. And again, that can make a huge difference in the cost of the loan. Okay, especially if you go from monthly to bi-weekly. So if you get paid bi-weekly every other week, it's probably a great idea to have 2 payments a month, bi-weekly payments for the loan, and you'll save some money. And if you're looking at a loan and you have some questions about that, you can always ask them to tell you what the difference would be. But you'll also be able to work it out yourself by the time you're done here. Okay. So here's an amortization table. This is what it looks like. And so it just has each payment that you're going to make on the loan. Okay, the date the payment's due. All right, the beginning balance, that's what you start with. That's how much money. So that first beginning balance, that's the amount of the loan, or the principal for the loan. Okay. This next one is how much the loan is. I'm going to delete that. So this is how much the loan is. Okay. And then what they're saying here is they're taking your payment and they're breaking it down into how much is paid towards principal and how much is paid towards interest by this particular payment. Okay, and then they get your ending balance, right? Your ending balance is they've applied the interest and then they've deducted your payment to that beginning balance. Okay, so what you'll notice here is that as we go down the principal column, more and more of your payment, which is always the same for the loan, payment's always the same. Okay, more and more of your payment is being applied towards principal because the balance is getting smaller and smaller, right? Because basically what they do is they calculate interest. They at the beginning of each compounding period, they calculate interest based on the ending balance and then the number of days of interest, right, of compounding, or the amount of compounding. However it's compounded, whether it's compounded weekly or monthly or however they do it, they're going to calculate the interest based on that and then add it to the ending balance and then subtract your payments, right? So basically you're kind of like bailing a bucket that's being filled up with interest. And so the more you bail, the more often you bail, the bigger your bailing, which would be the size of your payment, the quicker that bucket's going to get empty right there. Okay, and that's basically, so those are the sorts of questions you're going to be asked about an amortization table. You're going to be asked how often the loan occurs, or how often payments are due, what the compounding period is, and that's all you can all tell from the first 2 lines there. What you want to do is you want to look at the dates of the payment and tell whether they're a week apart, 2 weeks apart, or a month apart. Okay, so yeah, it's um, and so that's just be careful because you're not really sure what the date format is. It doesn't really say months, day, year, but you can look, and if you see the months cranking down here, or you can see that the months never get above, or the one number never gets above 12, then you know that that's months, right? And the one means that it's always due on the first of the month, and that's pretty typical, right? There'll be one day a month. Sometimes if it's bi-weekly, the date will actually change just because there's not always the same number of days in a month. Okay, but you'll notice it'll be every Friday or something like that. Okay. Okay, and and that's it. And I think that's just about everything you need to know about amortization tables. Okay, so just make sure you're able to interpret those and answer a few questions. All right. Uh, okay. All right. So yeah. So here's an example for key question 12. She's trying to decide whether to take out a 1-year loan or a 2-year loan. They both have monthly payments and the same annual interest rate. And so here's the two amortization tables, right? So you'll notice that the 2-year loan, the table's twice as long, okay, as the 1-year loan, okay? And it's the same beginning balance, so she's borrowed $4,000. Now for the 1-year loan, notice that her payment is $349.81 a month. And for the 2-year loan, it's only $182.74. Okay, so it seems like a good deal to get the 2-year loan because the payments are less, which, it may be depending on her financial situation, right? The other thing she might be able to do, now some loans you can't pay down early on, right? There are some you can, home loans usually can. Other loans, the only option to you is you keep doing your payments and they may let you, well, they always have to let you pay it off in full, right? So after a year, you can pay it off in full, but you owe whatever's owing at that point. So in this case, for example, after 1 year, let's see, it would be right there. No, it would be just the last one. There you go. Okay, so that's what she'd owe after 1 year. I think I got that. No, I think I'm off by one line. Anyway, it's somewhere around there. Um, so if after a year of making her payments, she came in and said, all right, I want the payout amount, and then they would tell her and she'd go to the bank and pay it off. Okay, so she'd still pay interest, interest she's already paid, right? She'd pay all this interest, whatever, up until the day she pays it, but she wouldn't pay the rest of the interest. But as you can see, she's paying the most interest in that first year. So, it's there's advantages and disadvantages to taking the longer loan or the shorter loan. Okay, so there are the amortization tables, and what is the total cost of the loan? Okay, so the total cost of the loan basically is the it's all of the interest. Sorry, it's all of the payments she's made. It's not here. It's going to be all of those payments, the number of payments, right? So be careful with that, because the cost of the loan is just the it's the number of payments times the regular payment amount, scheduled payment. Okay, so you can work that out, and that'll always be a number higher than the beginning balance or the amount or the principal on the loan. Okay, and then why is there more interest on the 2-year loan, right? Okay, so you'll have to be able to explain that. Of course, there's more interest on the 2-year loan because there are more compounding periods, right? They've lent her the money for a longer period of time, right? She's okay. And then why might a person choose a 2-year loan? So if you're asked a question like this, do try to come up with something, an explanation, right? So even if it costs more. Well, one of the hints it might be that the scheduled payments, right? The scheduled payments a lot lower on that 2-year loan than they are on the 1-year loan, right? So, one of the reasons is that's more affordable for her budget, right? She has $182 a month. That's comfortable for her. But if she tries to spend $349 a month, almost $350 a month, maybe that's just a little bit above her budget. Okay? So, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So there we go. So here's this question number 4 here was requires you to kind of take a look at how these um, situations that are listed here, the 4 situations, how they have an effect on the loan. Okay, I think it's just the 4. Okay, and so the interest rate changes from 6.5% to 7.9%. So the question is, how does this affect the payment? Okay, so in other words, you're looking at 2 different loans, right? One for 6.5%, maybe car loan, one for 7.9. Okay, and then the effect on the total cost of the loan. Okay, well, we know that the interest rate going up is going to increase the amount of the loan, right? The cost of the loan, and the cost of the loan is that's how we figure out what the payments are. We work out the total cost of the loan, and then we divide it by the number of payments, right? So that's definitely going to increase, right? Increase the payment. Okay. And then the effect on the total cost of the loan will definitely, the interest rate going up is going to increase the cost of the loan. Okay, so both of those will increase. Okay. Now here's another thing we talk about, a down payment, right? A down payment of $25,000. When you go to get a loan, like for something like a car or something like that, sometimes you'll have a down payment. Okay, and that's just some money that you bring to the table. The banks like that because what it means is that you're invested in that purchase as well, right? If you buy a car with no money down, okay, somebody buys a car or a truck with no money down, and then they stop paying and the bank comes and takes the truck back. If the person didn't have any money into it, then all they lose are their payments, or if they didn't make any payments, they don't lose anything. But if the person's paid $25,000 or some other amount, then the bank kind of has a little bit of safety there, because if the person stops paying, then it's $25,000 or $2,500 of their money is also involved in the truck, right? So um, so the banks like that, and the net result of that is usually you can get a lower interest rate. Okay, usually, not always. Usually, though, sometimes the bank will actually require a down payment. They won't give you a loan unless you have some money. And what they're saying there is, if you can't afford to save, say, $2,500 for your truck over, a couple of years, then you probably can't afford the monthly payments, right? And it's actually a good argument to make, right? If you don't have enough money to save up for it for a period of time, then chances are, now that's not always the case. Maybe you got a better job, right? Maybe you got a raise, maybe you got some money from somewhere, so it's not always great logic, but still it's certainly something the bank takes into consideration. But anyway, whenever you're making a down payment on something, it lowers the cost of the loan, it lowers the principal, and therefore it lowers the cost of the loan. Okay? The A. Okay, so what's that going to do for the payments? Well, if you lower the cost of the loan, then it's going to make the payments go down. Okay? And the total cost of the loan, okay, because the loan's going to go down, it's also going to lower the total cost of the loan. Okay. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how to answer these. Now, the length of the loan was increased to 4 years from 3 years. I don't like the way this is worded, but basically they're increasing the length of the loan. Okay. Well, we already saw from that amortization table above that reduces the um, payments, right? Because the yeah, so the longer the loan, the lower your payments. It's a little counterintuitive, right? Because it's the same amount of money, right? But now you're making more payments, so each payment is smaller. Okay, and you can see that from the amortization table comparing the 1 and 2 year loans. Okay, so um, yeah, so the in this one it's the total cost of the loan. Well, now this is kind of interesting because the total cost of the loan, because you're borrowing money for a longer period of time, even though your monthly payments are lower, the total cost of the loan actually goes up with the length of the loan, right? If you think about it, if you rent a car for a week, okay, it costs a certain amount. And if you rent that same car for 2 weeks, it's going to cost more, right? It's just the way it is, right? Now, you might get a better daily rate if you rent it for 2 weeks, but it's still going to cost more. Okay, and so that's pretty much the same situation we're in for when you increase the length of a loan. Okay, even though your payment goes down, okay, your payment goes down, still the total cost of the loan is going to go up. Okay, all right. So, okay, so I've rather abruptly left the loan part of it. Okay, so so we've looked at the different ways of getting credit and different ways to calculate interest. Okay, we looked at credit cards, we looked at loans. Now we didn't look at mortgages in particular, which is a type of loan for a house, but it's pretty much the same thing. The lengths of mortgages tend to be much longer, 20 years, 25 years. At one point there were 30-year mortgages, but I think they're being stopped now. The reason is that it's such a long time. People's circumstances change. You're paying so little towards paying off the loan at a 30-year loan. It really can take a very long time. And as I say, people's circumstances change over that long length of time. So I guess the government thought it was kind of risky, so I'm pretty sure they've stopped those types of loans. So it's 20 years or 25. And then the other thing, we talk about the down payment, that for mortgages, which is a huge expense for most people, they're usually one of the biggest purchases they'll ever make. In Toronto, I mean, people are, paying, $300,000, $500,000 for a fairly small house, and of course it's not that way everywhere. But what the government also insisted was that people have a fairly big down payment. It used to be, 5% or 10%, and then it went up a little bit, and now it's quite a bit for especially your first home. You have to have quite a substantial down payment, which of course, yeah, you sort of says, well, kind of hard to live in Toronto, and exactly, it really is. It's hard to get a home there anyway. Any big expensive city like that. But people find a way, and sometimes they live out in the country or something. So that's it for loans. So we're going to talk about driver's licenses. One of the things that I tried to kind of emphasize with this part of the course is that if you don't need a driver's license, you may not need a driver's license in your current situation, but it takes a while to get that driver's license. It takes a couple of years basically to get a full driver's license. And since you don't really know what's coming down the road necessarily, it's a good idea to start on that process as soon as possible. Get that beginner's permit, right? Start practicing your driving, get your second level, right? Your graduated license system, second part, and just keep working towards that, because that way, if you find a job or you have some opportunity where having a driver's license is necessary, then you'll be ready to go, right? If you wait until that opportunity comes along to start, it'll be way too late, because you can't even drive by yourself for the first little while. Okay, so that's the thing. And then the other thing is just make sure that you follow all the rules. Don't get on the naughty list, because it starts getting ugly, and it's you're being able to drive, especially in the north, legally, is kind of essential. It's hard to get anywhere without being able to drive. Okay, so we talked about the graduated license system. It takes 20 months to complete. Okay, and and that's basically it. It takes 20 months to complete. So um, yeah, I think let's see. Okay, and then you have to do the two road tests, right? So you pass the knowledge test, so a vision test and a knowledge of the rules of the road test. By the way, that vision test, it's not a really hard vision test, but if you've been kind of putting off glasses, if you have prescribed glasses and you lost them or broke them, or if you haven't had a vision test in a while, it'd be a good idea to get that sorted out before you go, because they basically make you kind of look at a few, some things, so a chart kind of thing. And I do believe they also check you without your glasses. So if you need those glasses, they'll put that right on your license that you have to wear glasses, which it makes sense, but somehow it's a rule anyway. It's like it's an obvious thing that you need to have your glasses when you're driving if you need them, but they'll write that right on your license. Okay, so just that first test. It's just your knowledge of the rules of the road and traffic signs, and make sure you study that book, because there's some of the traffic signs are from Toronto, where they got these weird looking signs that we never see up here. All right, so you'll pass that test, and then you'll be able to drive with someone in the driver's seat. Okay, and once you've done that for a while, then you go and you do your first road test where you drive with someone. It can be a little nerve-wracking, but you can do that one, and then you get your G1, I guess, and oh, sorry, you're gonna get your gonna get your G1 license, and then there's some restrictions and conditions on there. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. Sorry, that's your begin. I think pretty sure that's your beginner's permit. All right. So you have all of these conditions as a G1 driver. Okay. And the main one is that you have to be accompanied by a fully licensed driver who has at least 4 years driving experience. So unfortunately, your older brother, your older sister can't teach you to drive with the beginner's permit. We used to be able to do that, teach each other to drive. But obviously, they want someone. And again, this is, in the north, it's different, right? You can find lots of places to practice driving where there's no traffic at all. But, in southern Ontario, where you got literally 16-lane highways going through Toronto, and people driving at 110 kilometers an hour, bumper to bumper. They don't want someone out there who's being taught by someone who's just been driving for 6 months themselves. That's really what this is about. And unfortunately, the rule is for everybody rather than just, people in big cities. Okay. And then in that mindset as well, they have a big long list of roads where you can't actually drive, and those are all in Toronto. I think there might be, yeah, those are all in Toronto. Actually, I don't know about this one, but the Don Valley, Queen Elizabeth, those are all the ones that they look like. If you've ever seen a stock car race on TV, so imagine that, but with just regular cars and with regular people, not professional drivers. That's what the Don Valley Parkway looks like in the morning and most of the day. So you don't really want to be on there. Honestly, I've been driving for a long time, and I don't want to be on there either. It's crazy. But once if that's your daily commute, then you'll get used to it, and you'll be driving bumper to bumper just like the best of them. But when you're first learning, they want you to stay away from that stuff. Okay. So once you've done that, and then you get your G2 license. You'll take a test, a road test. You get that G2, and then you can basically drive. But there's a few little requirements which aren't really all that strict. No booze at all, and that And no number of passengers with seatbelts. Again, us in the South, they get kind of cranky. People that don't have seatbelts, people sitting in the back of the truck and stuff like that. And again, you wouldn't want to do that if you're in a big city like Toronto or, be on some big highway. Um, so they're pretty strict about that, actually. Okay. So, and then there's some costs involved in getting your license. It's usually not too bad, right? You're $125 and that's your first couple of tests and then your initial license. Okay. Now, a lot of people have to take those road tests a couple of times, so don't get worried about that. But they do charge you extra $40 for the G1 if you have to take it again, extra $75 for the G2. The main thing about having to take those tests again isn't really the price. Well, I mean, the price is it's not nice, but it's the fact that it usually takes a while to get another appointment. Usually takes a while to get an appointment. So if you really need to get that license straight away, you should book that appointment early. Leave yourself plenty of time in case you do have to take it again, and then and then practice driving. Practice a lot. Okay. Okay, so the next bit up here is the demerit system. Okay, so and the demerits are actually points you earn. They're naughty points. Okay, so it's not that they take the points off. You get points when you do something naughty on the road, like drive too fast, don't wear your seat. Well, I'm not sure about seatbelts, but if you drive too fast, if you don't stop for a school bus, leave the scene of an accident, stuff like that. Okay, at some point they're going to come and take your license away if you get too many naughty points. Okay, 6 demerit points. They send you a warning letter. At 9 points, they may ask you to come in for an interview, and then things get really ugly because you have to actually go to a Ministry of Ontario MTO office, not one of those third, like the little kiosks or the little place in Dryden. You actually have to go to an actual office somewhere. And then at 15 or more, your license is suspended. You got to send it to them. It's a horrible thing. Okay, so so you want to stay off that naughty list. All right, and then here's the other thing: if they do suspend your license, they may ask you to start over, getting taking the road test and all that stuff. So yeah, that's pretty severe. Okay, so here's how you get all those demerit points for failing to remain at the scene of an action. That's a biggie, 7 points. Okay, the other one, failing to stop for a peace officer. All right, yeah. So we all see that TV show Cops where they're chasing people and whatever, but you don't want to be on Cops. It's not good. Okay, eventually they're going to get you because they have very fast cars. They have lots of them and they have radios, right? So they're going to catch you. Um, so it's just not worth it. And then some other ones, racing. That's probably not a problem for us. No, I don't think too many people race around the north, but down south in Toronto, they've had some really big problems with racing, and people just being crazy on the streets, or being reckless, not crazy, reckless. Okay, here's a few other ones. Failing to stop at a railroad crossing if you're driving a school bus. Well, that's common sense. Following too closely. Apparently, I don't know if they ever enforce that one, because you sure see that in Toronto a lot. Failing to report an accident's another one. Improper passing. You even see that on the Trans-Canada. People pulling out into the oncoming traffic, and you got to pull off to the side of the road because, yeah, so that happens. Okay. And that's about it. Failing to stop is directed by traffic control devices. So basically, the stop sign, traffic light, stuff like that. Okay, seat belts. Not really. Like 2 points for a passenger failing to wear a seatbelt. Um, and then just a few other little things. So that's just gonna get your attention. Okay. But the biggies are the ones at the top, and speeding as well will get you a few points. Okay. Now we talked about speeding and the penalties. So the penalties, there's two charts, right? There's the regular speeding, and then community safety zone, which could be a school zone. It could be if there's an old folks home or a home for people with disabilities. You could have it there as well, right? They're going to designate a certain area, and there'll be signs, community safety zone or school zone, and you have to drive really carefully, and you should anyway, right? I mean, if you see a school zone, you want to drive carefully in case some little kitty comes darting out onto the street. Okay, so you have to have your complete focus, and if just in case you slip up, they're going to charge you a lot of money for it. Okay, so the way the speeding penalties all work, you get a certain amount of fine, and it's the kilometers an hour over the limit. So you actually have to know what the limit is, subtract the amount that you were caught doing, and then the difference there is you find the bracket in the chart, right? So if you were doing 40 in a 20 zone, then you're doing 20 over, and you'll be in that. And then your fine is per kilometer over, so it'll be 20 times 375. That's your set fine. But it gets better than that, because there's a victim surcharge which is calculated based on the amount of the fine. So if your ticket for speeding was $75, then it would cost you an extra $15, right, as the victim surcharge. Okay, so that's the whole ticket. So it snowballs pretty fast. Okay. And so we had a few examples there, okay? So in addition to the ticket, then you're also going to get some demerits, right? And you just look that up in the chart and how many demerit points you get, okay? So, the way it works out is that the fine kind of stings. In this case, $260 for what was the crime. The crime was going 35 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Well, that's pretty fast. If you think about it, in Sioux Lookout, I think the speed limit is what, 50? So you're doing what, 85 down Front Street? That's pretty reckless anyway. So it's cost $210 to do that, and plus 4 points. Okay. And I think chances are that if the police see you doing something like that, they might let you get away with doing 10 over, 20 over even. But once you're flying like that, they're gonna put on their Smokey and a Bandit hat and chase after you. Okay. So a big ticket. Okay, so now you can try a few of these and make sure that you're getting them, or if you did all right on your culminate or your key questions, and you'll find here. All right. Now, by law, you have to have insurance, of course, and the more experience you have, of course, the lower your insurance rates. If you have a lot of accidents that are your fault, then your insurance will go up as well. Okay. And where you live also has a huge impact on your insurance rates. Toronto, you're going to have a much higher rate than in northwestern Ontario, just because there's more traffic in Toronto. There's also a lot of scammers in Toronto. I've been reading stories about people who actually put dash cams in their cars because there's so many people who like cause an accident, force a person into an accident, and then try to scam them. The people are resorting to putting dash cams in their car. So that's really kind of scary if you think about it. Another good reason maybe not to have a car in a big city like Toronto. And so they explain why insurance rates vary. Now in Ontario, there used to be a difference between males and females. Males had higher insurance rates, but I believe that was kind of deemed unconstitutional. So now we all have the same rates. Okay. And so the other thing that affects your insurance rates is the length of time you've been licensed. Okay. So this is another reason to get that license as soon as you can. Even if you don't need it right now, you've had it so that when you need it in 5 years and you go to get a car and get some insurance, you've had your license for 5 years. It makes a difference, right? It could save you quite a bit of money on your insurance. Okay. Insurance isn't cheap, right? But it is necessary, okay? And it's just the sort of the cost of owning a vehicle, okay? Some people young people get put on their parents' insurance, but it still costs a fair bit of money. Okay. All right. All right. So, just to sort of wrap this up, we only got a few minutes left here, but um, there are some considerations for buying new and used vehicles. Okay, and new vehicles have a number of costs to them, so you can see those costs. And we've done quite a few questions where um, those sort of the list of things that you have to pay for and then get charged HST on is listed, and then there's a few things that don't have tax: the license fee, the fuel. Okay, and then you just work out the cost. The takeaway from this is that the base price, the sticker price, the price you see in the window when you're shopping on the dealer lot or when you go online, is usually about 30% lower than the actual drive away price, and that's just the way it is. And if you budget for that, you'll be fine. Okay. Now, when you have a new car and then as the years pass, it depreciates. This is the word, depreciation. And so the value of it goes down, but it doesn't, it's still valuable. And that's something to think about. A lot of things we buy, just you buy a microwave oven, you use it till it breaks, you throw it away, you buy a new one. But with a car, you kind of you use it for years and years and years, and if it breaks, you fix it, and then eventually you get tired of it, you sell it, or your circumstances change. When you sell it, it has a depreciated value, which is based on its condition and the value, original value, and plus experience in the market with that particular model. If it's had good reliability, if they're desirable, then the depreciation will be less and the sale price will be higher. Okay, so it's a good reason to keep your car in good repair, keep it in good shape, get regular maintenance and stuff like that, because 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you want to sell it. You want to get the highest possible price for it. Okay. Now, if you're buying or selling a used car, there's quite a few different bits and pieces um, that you have to take care of. You have to get a safety certificate and a drive clean emissions test. You may want to buy an extended warranty, and you want to check into those. If you buy a car from a used car lot, you pay HST. If it's a private sale, then you're going to pay PST on the value of the vehicle when you go to get your license plate for it. By the way, if you bring in a bill of sale that looks a little dodgy, like it's a lot less than the actual value of the car, they will look up the value of the car and charge you that. Unless you got a good story, like it's a gift from my auntie or something. Okay, but typically they'll charge you PST on the actual value, not what's on the receipt. Okay, so that's basically it. So there's some advantages to going to a used car dealer in that they have some reputation anyway, um, and then you might have some recourse if there's something wrong with the car afterwards. If it's a private sale, chances are it's as is, and you're going to get stuck with what you get. Okay, but the price might be cheaper. All right. Well, I think we pretty well did everything. Yeah, and then leasing, and we've talked quite a bit about leasing, just based on yeah, we talked about that a fair bit, so we can just kind of leave that, and I think that's it for our review. So hopefully we'll be able to um, so you'll be able to do a little bit of studying, and once you've got your everything handed in, then you can let your DUC know that you want to write the exam. They'll get the exam for me, and then you can write it. Okay, so good luck. If you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to contact me through the usual way, and that's it. So thanks for attending, and good luck in your exam. All right, bye now.